Welcome back. Welcome back to An Athlete's Journey. Today, I got a super special guest, a person I grew up with playing against and playing with in basketball, who is like a legend now because he is the legendary Kareem Abdul-Jabbar on the HBO series Winning Time. But I remember him when he was just plain old Solomon, you know what I'm saying? But he is definitely a good friend of mine. I just found him. I was like, man, I got to find him and tell him congratulations. He reached back to me. And like I said, he's one of the great California big men in history of California, high school sports. We'll get into his journey later on in this episode, but just wanted to introduce Soloman Hughes. Say hello, Solomon.
What's up, man? Appreciate you having me on, Travis.
No, much love, man. Much love and respect for doing this, man. So we're gonna get right into it, my bro. How did your basketball journey start?
Man, so I think genetics is a big part of that, right? So I'm one of five kids. I'm the fourth of five, and I had two older sisters who were very active in sports. Mm-hmm. My oldest sister, Kisa, played basketball at UCLA, and then the sister right under her also played high school basketball. Got recruited to play basketball on the next level, but ended up playing volleyball on the next level. So I think it was one of those things where you kind of just watching what your older siblings are doing. And then, actually the other part of it is my dad. So my dad is 6'8", and I think he played a year of high school basketball, but generally was not really an athlete. And when he moved down to Southern California right after he graduated in high school, he was, he was just working 9 to 5s. And his dad encouraged him to go to Long Beach City College. So he enrolls, the story is, when he went to campus to enroll in classes, the basketball coach saw him and was like, who are you and what are you doing? Why are you not on this basketball court? And so he ends up making the squad. And from there, after playing at Long Beach City College, got a scholarship to Cal State Fullerton. So he had his own basketball journey. The other part of that is my mom's brothers who were in Detroit. So my siblings and I are I think of my grandmother's 20 plus grandchildren, we're the only ones that were born outside of the city of Detroit. My mom's the only one that left the city and came out to Michigan. And so, came out to California. And so, but she had two brothers who played college ball, high school and college ball. One played at the University of Michigan and one played at Central Michigan. So it definitely there were at least 3 examples, my father and my 2 uncles, of people who had kind of gone down this path. Mm-hmm. And so, a combination of watching my sisters play, being tall, having some athleticism, and obviously coaches taking an interest in me, and that essentially kind of paving this road for me. And I think there was the connection between, if I do this well, then it can potentially provide opportunities in the educational realm, right? I could get college paid for, et cetera. And so, and I came from an interesting household, a split household, where my mom, her parents didn't go to college, she didn't go to college, but my dad, both his parents went to college. So it was like this interesting coming together of like these different family cultures or whatever. And so it was when I was thinking about what I wanted to do after high school, I was like, I definitely want to go to college, and basketball seemed like the logical path. And then, and I know this, Travis, you get tall early, right? So I'm like 6'6", 6'7" as a freshman, sophomore. And then you start hearing people talk about what you could potentially do, right? So then it's no longer just thinking about having success in the moment. It's like where you could potentially go, right? So everybody's talking about professional ball, et cetera. And so of course, you're a young kid, that gets in your head. And I've always found it fascinating. Just when I look back as a kid, and I think, we were coming up in the 80s where you had the Cosby Show. And so you were starting to see some examples of like, Black representation on TV besides what you were seeing in the NFL or the NBA, right? Or even professional baseball, because the numbers of African Americans, right, they were stronger than what they are now. Yeah. But there was just such a strong. I've heard someone say, I think it's Robert Ballard, who a famous oceanographer, said, kids look out 20 to 30 years, and the adults that they see portrayed those become their role models, right? So I think it's one of those things where you're seeing NBA players. You're at the Lakers, right? We're in the Lakers universe, and so there is this idea that maybe my life could be that. And so yeah, man, I think it's like it was a combination of a bunch of things: genes, the things that I saw around me, family, and also just wanting to figure out the quickest route to getting college paid for. So
it makes sense. Like I said, I think for most of us, it's the way to get out and get out of a current situation, or get out of like your neighborhood, or get out just wherever you're coming from.
Right.
So,
right,
you know what I'm saying? Like, I think with your situation, it's like you had the blueprint, which is great, to show you people can play, your family played at the next level, besides high school.
Right.
I know this is a dumb question, but were you interested in any other sports besides basketball?
This is a funny story. So when I was getting ready when I knew I was going to be transferring to high school, so I ended up going to JW North Riverside for 2 years, and then I transferred to Bishop Montgomery in Torrance. But essentially, after the basketball season ended my sophomore year, and there was still basically spring semester, I wasn't training with the basketball team because everybody knew I was leaving. And so I actually was training with the football team.
Oh, wow. You have been the tallest
exactly.
wide receiver ever.
Exactly. Straight up. Right. And so, I think it was like, because at that point, it was like my parents were divorced, and I was trying, like, there were so many unknowns in the air. So there was I had talked about the possibility of transferring, but I was like, who knows what could happen. And so, I was messing around, training with the football team, and it was just like spring stuff, right? So there was like no pads, nobody was hitting. It was just conditioning and stuff like that. And so, so I had a little bit of interest in that, but I would say generally, because there was 5 of us, and my parents could only pay for so many things. It was just like basketball. Like, that was the one thing we got to do because it was relatively cheap when I was in Riverside. So
I know, I understand that.
Yeah.
I know you played AAU growing up.
Right. Yeah.
Because I feel like everybody back then who was any good, like, played in the AAU circuit.
Right. For sure. Sure.
When did you start playing AAU?
So, So Slam and Jam Riverside.
Yep.
My brother started playing, I think it was his freshman year in high school. And then he started playing his sophomore year in high school. And there was a brother who was, I feel ashamed that I'm blanking on Izzy Washington. Right?
Yes, of course.
One of Izzy's like really good friends was running like the Slam and Jam arm in Riverside. And I got to play in one of the summer league teams when I was the end of my 8th grade year. So basically going into freshman year in high school, I got to go. But I was sitting the bench. But I will say that tournament, you might have played in this as well. It was at Long Beach State.
Yeah, the NIT.
Man, so Antoine Walker, I'm blanking on these names. So Antoine Walker was with like Team Chicago. It was a brother from DC who went to Georgetown. Not Allen Iverson, but Victor Page.
Victor Page. Yeah, left-handed brother. Victor, I remember Victor Page.
He was just like tearing the roof open at Long Beach State. And I remember because there was the squad with like the Benjamin brothers, and Toby and Jelani. It was like, the superstars, right? The superstars came in, it was like, everything shut down, right? And so it was cool to be in those tournaments and be around those cats. But like I was on a squad where I just got a couple minutes here and there. Because I wasn't like super tall yet. I was still kind of growing, definitely still developing coordination, et cetera. But I had an older brother who was 6'7" and was on the A team for the Riverside squad, and so I got to tag along essentially. So.
Okay, well, no, that's cool. I remember going into my junior year, I played with the little K-Switch team with Barron. Me and Barron played, and we lost to. We lost in the semifinals to like Riverside North. Oh, no, Riverside North Church, New York Riverside Church.
Oh man, right?
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah, where they had like Elton Brand, Ron Artest,
right?
Lamar.
A ridiculous squad, right? Exactly.
Yeah, they had those 3 alone.
Right.
You know,
Right.
but that year, that was a crazy year.
Yeah.
I remember I played going to my 10th grade year, I was on Caney Bulls and we lost to Steven Jackson,
Oh
Steven Jackson.
wow. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. For
Yeah.
sure.
His
So okay.
Houston team.
Yeah. Canny Bulls. So that same summer.
Yeah.
No, actually, it was like I think it was no, I'm totally mixing the time frames up, but it was maybe my freshman year.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Jeff Trepanier, Kenny
Mm-hmm.
Bruner, and me, and I can't remember some of the other squads, but Jeff and Kenny were like the head honchos on the squad. We played Canny Bulls at like this real. It was kind of a rink-a-dink tournament in Vegas. And you were obviously not on that squad, but there was a brother who was playing at Compton High School maybe, but we ended up beating him. I think it was we kind of surprised ourselves, but that's my K&E Bulls.
No. K&E was cool. Like pretty much K&E Bulls was the Crenshaw team. Everybody who played for K&E went to Crenshaw.
That's what's up.
Kevin Bradley, all them dudes played on K&E.
Yeah.
So I remember that. So I know you lived in Riverside, so you went to Riverside Poly, right?
JW North.
JW North. Yeah, Riverside Poly. JW North.
Get it right.
So you go there for 2 years.
Right.
You transfer, all right, to Bishop
Montgomery.
Oh, it's like all a bunch
Man,
of
Travis? Yeah.
my bad. People, let me tell y'all something. I almost went to school with him. I was talking to the coach, and we was going to talk about it. I was talking to the coach, and I was leaving manual arts after my 10th grade year. And me and my dad was kind of deciding what schools, I was going to go to because I went to Crenshaw and then manual. So I was leaving the city. So I remember we talked to the coach and he was like, yeah, man, we getting a big center. So you and Soloman Hughes. I was like, oh yeah, I know Soloman. Good dude. You know what I'm saying? He can play. He said, y'all going to be like the Twin Towers of this league. Y'all going to be awesome. We going to win state with y'all. And I was kind of like getting pumped, like, yeah. Right. So we were looking for places in Carson, me and my dad, and my stepmother at the time. But it's just that we ended up moving to Fontana, and I went to school with my cousin. But that was the school that
that's
I was
wild, man. Yeah, that's wild. So I think two thoughts. One, you would have been a beast, and I think we would have won state for sure. Like, no doubt about that. But I also think our junior year, you might have dodged a bullet because I love him to death, but I got to keep it real. Brandon Price was on our squad. He ended up going to Santa Clara for a year.
I remember.
No one gunned like Brandon. I mean, bro, really, you're in the post, with a dude 6'1" guarding you, and it's like you're not even there. It's like you're it's like a plane of glass, right? Man, so that was I rebounded a lot. I will say that. So I think you might have dodged a bullet. But,
no, I got you.
But I will. The other thing I'll say, and we talked about this on the phone the other day. It was pretty funny. Both of our schools went up to the Bay Area when we were sophomores for the Berkeley tournament. So JW North won the Berkeley tournament when I was a freshman, but I was playing JV. And then my sophomore year, we went up and we lost in the first round to San Mateo High School. And I ended up going to Berkeley with a dude he's the city attorney for the city of Pinole, Eric Casher. We're really good friends. But every chance he gets, he reminds me of the fact that, man, you guys had all these ballers on your squad and we beat you. You guys had because we had my brother was 6'7", I was 6'8". We had another dude that was 6'8". We had really good guards, and they came in and just, I don't know. I think it was one of those things where we didn't take them serious and they ran through us. But anyways, what he says, the other thing when I told him you and I reconnected, he was like, "Oh yeah, we played against Travis too. We beat them too."
Yeah. Well, no, we wasn't. I meant we wasn't that good at manual. It was. Gotcha. I was the only big dude. Our guards are good. We wasn't that good that year. But they smashed. They beat us. I don't know if they smashed us, but I know they beat us.
Yeah. Those were like the two biggest wins in their schools program's history. So
okay.
It's all good.
Okay. No, we was. I think we probably took the same. Oh, these are good. This is going to be a layup.
Exactly.
You know what I'm saying? And they end up just beating us. Oh my God.
Right.
So, what would you say your most memorable moment in high school was?
Ooh, most memorable moment. Man, well, you know, it was um hmm, most memorable moment. Um I feel like anytime we got to play at a big arena, that was fun, right? Like when we got to play, we played in the Martin Luther King Classic against Compton at UCLA. That was a lot of fun. Um, I mean, I think one, like probably the best game I had, it was probably my junior year. We played Mirror in CIF championship, Southern section
Mm-hmm.
at the pond. And I had like 25 and 12 and like 7 dunks, but we ended up losing. So, you know, it was all for nothing. But that was a fun game because it was like, I feel like it was a little bit of maybe a kind of a coming out party for me, my junior year.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I think you know, obviously it was a loss. You can't really celebrate it, but that was a good memory. Yeah, yeah. I mean, part of the memories for me is like I was getting back in contact with you has been so dope because it's like just remembering all these massive hoopers, right? Like all these incredibly talented people that were in Southern California at the time. I mean, like we were kind of under the umbrella of Shea freaking Cotton, right? Like you just said, like Shea Cotton was a cultural movement, like a
Yeah,
cultural
yeah.
moment, right?
Mm-hmm,
And
mm-hmm,
like that was our community, like our ecosystem was Shea freaking Cotton. And so um, actually, you know, a good memory about that because Shea ended up transferring to St. John Bosco
mm-hmm,
um,
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
the same year that I transferred to Bishop Montgomery. And so we were in the same league.
Yeah.
And his very first game back from injury, from because he got injured at Mater Dei, and so his
Yeah.
very first game back, you know, we're pulling up to St. John Bosco, and there's like TV camera, like buses, like not buses, but vans with like with cameras, like,
Right.
and we're like, oh, this is real, like this thing is real. And we get in the gym, and it's like lined up, there's cameras and reporters all over the place. The gym is packed out. The energy was insane. And Shea, man, his first possession, he came down the lane and dunked on our two guards so viciously. It was just wild. It was wild. That was a
No,
fun
no,
moment.
yeah. No, definitely. We played them in the playoffs in the like the quarterfinals or something. They beat us
Okay.
at Bosco in the quarter. It was
Okay.
him and Brandon Johnson. They beat us.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
yeah.
Johnson was a hooper.
Yeah,
Johnson
he
was a
was
hooper.
athlete, super athlete.
Yeah. Right.
Shout out to Brandon if you're listening, Brandon.
Yeah.
So obviously you're getting recruited heavy, right? You're one of the top big men in the state, right? What made you choose Cal, and how did your whole recruiting process go?
Yeah, you know, I think it was one of those things where there what basketball was becoming for me basically because my parents were basically splitting when I was in junior high school, but it was like a really different households when I got to high school and I left Riverside where I was living with my mom and moved up with my dad and my grandmother in Carson. And so, you know, it was you know, they were going through their life changes and trying to figure out their futures, et cetera. And so, you know, I know you can relate to this. There's this, you're just trying to figure out which way is up, right? And so I think for me, there was a point where I was just emotionally tired and I just wanted to get as far away from California as possible. And I just had this thing where I thought at the time I really wanted to play for a Black coach. Okay. And Perry Clark was at Tulane. And so I visited Stanford, I visited Oregon, I did like an unofficial to USC. I visited Tulane, and I visited DePaul as well. So it was kind of an eclectic mix of schools, right?
It is.
Yeah. And so New Orleans, I had an uncle that had gone to school out there, and he raved about New Orleans. And I'll say this, I went there, I tasted the food, and I was like, man, I'm coming here, right? Which is like the most ridiculous reason to choose an institution, right? But I will say what I did was right around the early signing period in November, when I told so I was playing Rockfish, AAU with Rockfish.
I remember.
When I told them that I was thinking I wanted to commit to Tulane. They were like, "Are you out of your mind? Like here's it. Like, here are the facts. Perry Clark is not going to be there in 2 years because he's on the rise right now and he's going to get pulled to a bigger program. That's inevitable. You're looking at a team that's having a lot of success right now, but they're having a lot of success with seniors who are not going to be there when you get there. And they're like, this is a bad decision. Like, you should stay on the West Coast. Like, why Tulane? There's essentially better options. And so, so as much as I wanted to just pull the trigger and sign and just be done with it, I did take their advice. And the night before the early signing period, I'm on the phone with one of the assistant coaches, and I said to him, I just want to commit right now. I don't want to sign. And Travis, it's like one of those things. As an adult now, I think about this. I'm like, if I ever talked to a 17-year-old like this, I would feel like great shame, right? Like, he punked me and was like, what? I mean, it was a super manipulative business pitch of like, this is so disappointing. You're breaking our hearts. You have been talking about how interested you are. In your heart you want to do this. You need to sign. If you don't sign, this scholarship might not be here for you, right? And it's one of those things where, as an adult, you hear that and you're like, good, peace. Like, for me in the first place. Yeah. But I totally, in that moment, just kind of get sucked into this super manipulative spiel, and I'm like, okay, let me just sign the document. And so my parents weren't home. I was home by myself with my grandma and signing day. And so I ended up signing my parents' names and mailing it off, right? After after I basically got bullied into it. So I send it off, but I don't say anything to anybody. And it's wild, man. I mean, it's one of those things where, when life happens, man, and families are split and people are really in their own world. My parents didn't even ask about who signed the document. They didn't, it was just like, whatever, Solomon's going to Tulane, it is what it is. And then, I have a pretty strong senior year. Like, I think I surprised myself. I mean, I think I always really struggled with confidence, but I had a strong enough year to where I was like, man, I guess I could have gone bigger. And so people are telling me, man, like, why did you sign with Tulane? That was ridiculous. Like, that was not a good idea. And I end up telling them after I graduate, like, I really had a heart to heart. I really basically had a bunch of heart to hearts, and, looking back on my senior year, and having time to reflect. So basketball season has ended. I've graduated from high school, and I have a few weeks where I really have time to reflect. I'm like, man, that really was a stupid decision. And I made that decision when life was moving at 90 miles per hour. And so thankfully, this little bit of a break, I felt like I got good sense. And so I asked for a release, and they were like, hell no, like, no chance. Right. So I'm like, man, and I'm like, in my mind, at that time I'm 18, in my 18-year-old mind, I'm like, all right, just be super honest with them, be transparent with them, and maybe they'll have a heart. And I'm like, listen, I don't want to come. When I came on the visit, I didn't look at the gym. I barely met all the players. I just like the food. Like, this was like, forgive me, this was a bad decision. They're like, no, absolutely not. You're coming. And so they put on a full court press. And so my AAU coaches, thankfully, they really were advocating for me. And they were like, Solomon, don't go, don't enroll, just stay home. And this is what we'll do. We'll find you a prep school, so you can play AAU ball for one more summer, and we'll find you a prep school, right? So they're out there looking all on the East Coast to see if there's a prep school opportunity for me. And I ended up going to AAU tournament, one more as a super senior. And all the Tulane coaches showed up to it, and they came to my hotel room, which was a total violation at the time because it was a dead period and they weren't supposed to be talking to people. And they showed up, and I'm in this room with all other AAU players, and they tell them go wait in the other room. And they're just, they got me surrounded. And Perry Clark's like, Solomon, I love you, man. You got to come to Tulane. You're breaking my heart. You got to come. And I'm just like, because the other thing was this, as soon as I signed, I didn't hear nothing from them. Right. I signed in November. They were like, you're breaking heart. I signed and I don't hear anything from him.
Right.
I'm like, man, what am I doing? And so he's like, we I love you. We care for you. You got to come, whatever. And I'm just like, I'm not doing it. Now, the other thing, this is a lot of context. This is a long story. But the other thing was there were there were 5 of us that signed that year. Chris Owens, who ended up playing at Texas, who was a baller.
I remember Chris Owens.
Right. I think it was Byron Mouton, who played at Maryland. I think so. And I might be messing up these names. And there was a brother who ended up transferring to Kent State. So there was 5 of us total, right, that signed. But I was the very first one to bounce, right? And so what ended up happening, making a long story short, I didn't go. And I went to Fork Union military prep school in Virginia, which was essentially juvenile hall, like real talk. Like the kids that get sent to Fork Union, I learned this when I got there, because when I visited with my mom, it was in the summer, nobody was on campus, right? And so of course they paint the picture of, it's a great institution. And all institutions have their issues. So I'm not trying to badmouth Fork Union, but the reality is a lot of the student population that goes there gets sent there for disciplinary reasons. So, so you have these, these classes of people, right? You have the postgrads who are, a lot of them are like trying to get their test scores together because, at the time, and thankfully the SAT, it's, a lot of schools are like realizing just how problematic it was as a barrier to get into higher ed. But a lot of folks were just trying to get their test score, right? And so, so it's essentially like JC ball, right? So I'm doing that. And then I get back on the recruiting trail, and it came down essentially to Florida and Cal Berkeley. And I was like, in Florida, I'll never forget, Billy Donovan was like, Solomon, make the hard decision. Make the hard decision. It'll work out for you if you make the hard decision. If you come all the way out here, it'll work out for you. And I just, at the time, Berkeley was like, I was like, I'm feeling now like I want to go to a place where it has a strong enough academic reputation where if basketball doesn't work out, because I'm not really sure how I feel about it in the first place, right, I'll walk away with a degree that will be somewhat helpful. And it's proximate, and it's packed, at the time it's Pac-10, and it's packed, it's like, I didn't get to go to UCLA. So I was like, I'll try to do the next best thing. So,
Well, that makes sense. Like I said, the fact that Tulane was like, we're going to punk you to make sure you come. And coaches do that. I mean, I would say this. When I was transferring from UCLA, I was recruited by heavy by like schools. So I went on trips to Tennessee, Oklahoma, Long Beach State, some other schools, but like back then you had to sit out 2 years if you were Pac-10 instead of 1. And I wasn't going to do that. So it essentially came down to Oklahoma and Long Beach State. Wow. And I remember when I was at Oklahoma, I signed the scholarship paper, right? And I was like, well, I guess I'm going to Oklahoma, because I was like, damn, they just slid the paper right in front of me, And so like when I went to Long Beach State, there was one of the assistant coaches. He said, Travis, you can sign as many scholarship papers as you want. It is whatever school you step foot on the first day of campus, that's what school you got to go to,
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so like I remember this like it was yesterday. There were these brothers. One went to Oklahoma, one went to Long Beach State. Grant Stone, he was from Oklahoma, but he went to Long Beach State. Then he had an older brother who went to Oklahoma. And they were arguing about, like me, like what school I'm going to. He's like, Travis already in the program in Oklahoma, man. Well, he's coming to Oklahoma. And he's like, no, Travis is coming to Long Beach State. Wow. And so I, in the end, I couldn't leave home.
Yeah.
I wasn't ready yet, to leave home. Yeah. So I ended up going to Long Beach State. I remember Calvin Sampson called me, not cussed me out, but just was like, Long Beach State, Travis? Long Beach State? Really? Right? I'm like, coach, I appreciate it. I can't leave home, man. I can't leave my family. It's like, forget that, son. Long Beach State over Oklahoma, the Big 12? I was like, damn, I was like, maybe I make a mistake. But then I was, nah, coach, I appreciate it. Then he just, all right, bye, click. So, yeah, I remember that. Yeah, so.
Yeah. Oklahoma, you would have been way out there. Like,
yeah, no, dude, I went to visit. It's nothing there, right. Nothing wrong with Oklahoma people. It's nothing in northern Oklahoma but the school of Oklahoma.
Right.
It's like a little town and this big, huge school.
Yeah.
Oklahoma City's like 30 minutes away, 45 minutes, whatever it is,
Yeah.
But I'm just like, oh my God, dude. Like,
Man.
and at that time they had the screw music. I just wasn't, I wasn't a fan. Anybody who's from the South knows what screw music is.
Right, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
All
wild.
right.
Yeah.
So you're in college, right? What was the hardest thing from college, in college from high school?
Yeah, man, so it's so wild because even like the thing that you pointed out, like, and it's so funny because we sound like old heads talking about like in our day, you had 2 years if you transfer, right? But it's like that's real, man. Like it was like there were so like first of all, you had to sit out 2 years. Your coaches had power over whether or not they released you, right? Like I remember because at one point I wanted to transfer to Cal, and the coach was like, no, like no, that's not how this works, right? And so it's just wild. I mean, I am so grateful for the way people have advocated so that people can have like the same rights as other students in terms of like how they make decisions around where they are. But to think back on our, when we were playing, like, yeah, 2 years, man, and you lose one, right? It was like 2 years, and don't you like you lose a year of eligibility?
If you transfer same conference, you lose a year.
Okay.
Yeah. But like if you go out of conference, just
right.
1 year.
Okay. Yeah, it's like super draconian, right? But honestly, Travis, real talk, bro. I was so depressed when I was in college at UC Berkeley, but I didn't know it. Like there was no word for it, right? Like it's like I'm so grateful that we're in this era now where there's language around stuff with regards to like your mental health. But at the time, and I had no idea, and so I was like, I felt like, I think it's just, like my freshman year actually. So I mean, I went to because I went to prep. I came in.
You were 1 year.
You were sophomore,
yeah,
exactly.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But I mean, you as UC students, 98 was the year that that affirmative action
Prop 187, yeah.
Exactly. 187. So they could no longer, race was no longer a factor. They could no longer consider as a factor. So my incoming class to UC Berkeley, and I'm sure this happened in UCLA, my incoming class essentially was like halved. It was like, at one point it was like 4% of the entering class were African-American students, and then my year was like 2%. And then within that population was like a disproportionate number of football players and basketball players, right? And so, and like honestly, man, my freshman year, when I think about our roster, all 11 of the 12 scholarship players were Black.
Of course.
And all of us, like, so 11 of the 12 were Black. And I'm almost certain we were all Pell Grant, every single one of us, like across the board, right? Like no questions asked, right? Yeah. And I think, and I was so unaware of the gap between how wealthy people were on the campus relative to like I didn't think I did not grow up poor. We were like, like middle class, like working class, like it was like, it wasn't like I had not been around that like that at Berkeley. And then you get to Berkeley and you're just seeing like legacies and like real deal family wealth. And that was a trip, man. And the other thing is, I mean, just like Berkeley, there was a lot of tension around just the presence of student athletes on the campus. Especially Black folks. I mean, that's just real. I mean, it's not like I'm saying something that nobody knows, right? I mean, there is, I remember people would say, don't wear your sweats to class, because there definitely is this feeling amongst faculty that you're not taking them serious, right? You're not taking school serious. And so, yeah, man, I feel like, but so there was that, and then there was like all the politics, of the coaches, right? All the stuff that's going on, like this idea of like it being a meritocracy. If the hardest workers are going to play, the people who are playing the best in practice are going to play. Nope, that's just not the reality. It's just not what it is, right? So I feel like my freshman year just went by really, really fast, and then it was like my sophomore year where I was just like, man, I was like going through it. I was like miserable, super depressed, super anxious, and I just, I was like just a really, really bad version of myself in terms of just how I was treating people, how I was treating myself, and I think when I think back on college basketball, I'm really, really grateful for the friendships, because those are the things that have remained. Like there's people that I play with that I consider family. Like they're like the midnight hour phone calls in an emergency, right?
Mhm.
And when we talk about our experience, when we reflect on it, it was like we were living our lives, like our lives where everything was put into a blender. Because we were playing, my freshman year, we were playing at Oakland Arena because they were still building Haas.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
so
Mhm. Mhm.
we had to drive to Oakland for our practices. And they were like, basically, you cannot take classes after like 1 o'clock, right? But then we had morning workouts as well. So it was just like everything was just so like high pressure, high intense. And you're hearing this messaging of like, you need to take school serious, right? But
Mhm.
it's also like, but if it appears that you're not taking basketball serious, like you're going to suffer, right? And so I mean, yeah. So I will say it was up and down. I had a, my junior year, man. I feel like I started the season. I was like buried at the end of the bench, and I eventually ended up starting like the last games. We went to the tournament. I started the game against Fresno State. I led the Pac-10 in field goal percentage. So I was like, I definitely felt like God was still watching over me, even though I felt like, man, why did I come here? Why am I playing for this coach who clearly doesn't care about me individually as a person, or whatever? And then, yeah, but I stuck with it. And then senior year, um, you know, we even had more success. We went to the tournament again. Um, but yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's so many things, and I know you can relate to all these things because it's like there's just so many mixed messages, right? So many mixed messages, and at the end of the day, we made a lot of money for the UC system. We made a lot of money. Like when people, when you talk, when I tell people, I did my PhD in higher education policy and research studies, and part of it is because when you think about America's institutions of higher education, people from other countries are beating down the door to send their kids to these schools.
Mhm.
And I would absolutely argue this, and I think that the numbers say this. One of the reasons that I think our institutions have been able to thrive so much, if they've had this like influx of cash from March Madness, from college football, basically professional sports under the guise of amateurism, right? That's just like pouring money and attention into these schools, right? People talk about Michigan's brand, like how well known it's globally. And you think about the impact the Fab Five had on that. Like everybody knows that because these superstars graced that campus for a year, right? And so like it's just wild, man. It's really wild when I think about like how the UC's, man, and still, I mean, they're still making a killing for sure. So yeah.
No,
Yeah.
no, it's insane. I would say, look, I mean, I know each round in the tournament, the school gets like 5, 10, 15, 20, whatever, 25 million each win you
Right.
play in the tournament. And I remember, obviously, my freshman year, we went to the Sweet 16. My
Right.
sophomore year, we lost. We got upset, by Detroit
Mhm.
Mercy. But I
Yeah.
remember your team, your sophomore year, because y'all was really good. You had
Right.
Gino Carlisle, who like led the Pac-12, Pac-10 in scoring.
Yeah.
I hit up to him. I interviewed him earlier. Shout out to Gino.
Nice.
You had yourself, Gino. I mean, you had a squad. I mean, I remember
Yeah,
that.
that was my freshman year. Yeah,
Yeah,
we
your
had
freshman
Francisco
year.
Elson, who played with the
Francisco Ellison,
Spurs.
yeah, played with the
Yeah,
Spurs.
Sean Lampley. Yeah,
Yeah,
because that's
yeah,
right. We split that year.
yeah.
We
Y'all beat
lost.
us. Y'all beat us in Cal at the
We
arena,
lost. Yeah, and
and
we
we
lost it.
lost at
Yeah,
home.
yeah,
Yeah, so
yeah.
like I remember y'all had a super talented team, and like you
Mhm,
said,
mhm.
like as far as college, you make a lot of UCLA obviously makes a
Man,
mess load of money.
bro.
So the Potty Pavilion. You see, I don't know if you've been there last time you've been there, but they got a scoreboard and just all this
I've seen
stuff now.
pictures. Yeah, I've seen
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
pictures. Yeah,
yeah. So
man.
they
I mean, it's
make
like real. I mean, like because you went to the Sweet 16. How many years?
just my freshman year. My freshman year.
But you went to the tournament every year that you were
Mm-hmm.
there? Okay. Yeah, it's like more so, I think, than anybody in the pack. It was like you guys were like literal walking billboards, like for the labor that you guys did for that institution, man. Because I mean, there was no brand like UCLA in terms of sports, right? When you think
Yeah.
about John Wooden, et cetera, man. But like, man, it's yeah, it's a trip, man. It's a trip. And it's wild. I mean, I it's we had a lot of guys on our squad who were from SoCal, so it was always fun to come back.
Mm-hmm.
But it was like everybody wanted to go to UCLA. That was the thing.
Yeah.
Everybody wanted to go there. You guys were like the envy of everybody for sure, man. Like
No, no,
that's the truth.
definitely, definitely.
Yeah.
I like I said, I love UCLA, my time there, but
Yeah.
like you said, I think it's a situation where like as far as like they have to put butts in the seats, right?
Exactly.
And
Exactly.
so like UCLA, Lava was a great recruiter. So he had the number one recruiting class,
Right.
like 3 straight years in a row, something like that.
Right.
And like
Right.
my freshman year, it was, we were number one, us and Duke. Obviously me, supposed to be Shea, Barron, Earl, Billy, God rest his soul, Rico, Todd,
So
and Todd was
crazy.
a walk-on. And
Right.
then sophomore year, it was like he had 4 McDonald's. Yeah.
I know. So crazy.
Yeah.
So crazy.
Dan, Ray,
Jerome.
Jerome. And the funny thing was Matt was like a recruit, but not he wasn't even on the level of the rest of them.
Man, that's that right. Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So
that's a trip.
So that year it was, for me, it was a struggle. Like I was, sad like you. Like I would play some games, play 25 minutes, and then play like 6, then play 30, and then play 2. 25, then 8, like I was, he would put me in when I wasn't ready. You know what I'm saying? Not play me when I'm amped. Right. And so like after that, I was like, man, I can't, like I remember when I went into his office and said, I looked down like this, coach, I don't want to play here. I just want to find my own way. And he was like, Travis, you need to stay here. This is UCLA, son. So I was like, nah, coach, I just want to go my own way. So I ended up obviously going to Long Beach State.
That's a trip.
Yeah, no, I would say, since I know you had up and down in college, but what would you say your greatest triumph was in college and your greatest failure?
Well, I'll start with failure, because I definitely, I feel like as I've gotten older, I'm realizing there's so much wisdom that can come from failure, right? If you don't let it completely defeat you or completely crush you. I think, I feel like there was so much more, I think, that I could have done to learn about the mental side of the game. I think I was a very, very anxious player, and I really struggled at the free throw line, like really, really struggled, like historically bad numbers. And it was a mind trip, right? Like I would get to the line, and in my mind, I saw all the eyes of the arena like fixed on me, right? And so I'm standing there trying to do this, accomplish this goal of like putting the ball in the hoop, and I'm like, what are they thinking? What stereotype am I about to like affirm in their mind? The bigs can't shoot free throws or whatever. So I think like there's like doing more of like the mental stuff, right? Like just breathing practices, etc. Because I mean, really, bro, like it was one of those things I just didn't know. I think part of it is the game moves so fast that it can disguise some things. So like my anxiety issues, man, like I just didn't, it was like one of those things I just feel like, oh, I guess this is normal, right? And then you talk to people as you get older, like, no, that's not normal at all. Like, and there's ways you can kind of like combat that and manage it. And so like, I really didn't think I managed that well, but I'd say trying, man, honestly, I feel like just there's some really, really rich friendships that came out of that time. And I think, yeah, man, just being a part, especially my senior year. I'll say it was like a mix of my junior and senior year. I feel like just as people, as teammates, we were developing some really special bonds, and that's the stuff, man, that really stays with you, right? Because then you start, you're raising kids together, and so that's something I'm super grateful for. Yeah, man. I think it's like the relationships for sure. I'm more and more so. I guess I don't know if proud is the right word. It's more of like the thing I'm most grateful for is a lot of the relationships that were developed. So yeah.
No, I would say this, like, as far as, like if I'd have known what I know now, I would have networked and been like way more social, with everybody in college when I was in college,
Right.
Like they kept us in this little cocoon as that like basketball team. I would have been like, hey, Jim, hey,
Right. Yeah. That's so, it's so on point. And I feel like there was a couple things that I experienced. So you're just so busy because Division I basketball is a full-time job. You're just so busy that the effort to get out and network, it's real. It's not impossible to do it, but it is a like that you're moving like heaven and earth to create space for that, right? But the other problem with that is like the 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 what's implied in the programs is that if you're hanging out outside of the team, you're not really with us, right?
Yeah.
I feel like that was I would definitely say that was part of what was cultivated by our coaches, which was like, you guys, you have that's your fraternity, that's your social group, you guys hanging out together, right?
Yes.
And I think and obviously the like, sure, that's all good and fine, but if the purpose behind it is just so we can ultimately, help make this institution money, right? Then I feel like it's like what undergirds that is problematic, right? If it's just we're just thinking wins and losses. But the other thing I'll say is I had this experience where and my dad would say this to me. He was like, I'm telling you, watch. I'm telling you, you're on that campus now, and all these folks are telling you you're so special. When you go back there looking for a job, watch what happens. And I promise, Travis, I promise. There was a dude who was working at we went on a field trip once to EA Sports, which they had a headquarters in Redwood City.
Okay.
And it was like, they rolled out the red carpet for us. We're walking on the campus and they're just, super cool. I graduate and I call asking about an internship. And the dude was like, what's your name again? So yeah, it was like a good like jolting lesson of, man, it's like, it bees like that sometimes, essentially. So
no, that's real. Definitely. I was going to ask you two things. First, what do you think, since you're my era, what do you think about the NIL money for players now? Because to be honest, if the NIL money was when I was at UCLA, I probably wouldn't have left UCLA because the money would have been so great. I was like, I can't. How can I leave $100,000 a year, or $200,000 a year in that?
Right, for sure. I just, as you're talking, I'm thinking about this, man. Imagine if you had been given the opportunity. Okay, so because again, your freshman year, you were at Crenshaw. Everybody knew you, Travis. Imagine if you were able to run Travis Reed basketball camps just once per summer in high school, right? Yeah. You're like putting that money in the bank, right? And then when you get to UCLA and you have this national global platform, imagine if you were able to go back to Fontana, go to LA and do a Travis Reed basketball academy, right? The fact that you couldn't do that, but Lavin could, right? Lavin and Hall, all them cats could, but you couldn't do it, right? It's like, bro, it's just so shameful that we lived through that era, right? And so I think at the end of the day, man, it's like, no matter how they talk about it, there was a portion of students whose economic rights were not recognized, straight up, right? And there was a disproportionate makeup in terms of like the colors, a lot of Black students, right? So I feel like my thoughts are with the NIL stuff now is there still are too many restrictions and they're still problematic. And at the end of the day, like if a kid at UCLA can start up a company and UCLA, UC Berkeley, they would praise these students. They would talk about, look at these entrepreneurs, right? And they're not taking a cut, right? They're getting their whole, right? Like there needs to be no difference between what that student is doing and what an athlete is doing, who's been working on their craft even before they got on that campus. Again, they should have the same economic rights. Like I feel like, there obviously has been movement, but I think at the end of the day, the schools are still making a ton of money. I think that, and yeah. And the other thing is this, man, it's like, we both know there's a time thing. There's the time factor, right? So like to really be able to engage in these entrepreneurial opportunities, you got to have time. And now more than ever, I feel like college sports, college basketball, college football, it's like really year round. Because you got your off-season trainings, right? When there's so much pressure put on those, even though they're trying to like push back on like you can't have summer practice, et cetera. But we know what's really happening with that stuff, right? Seasons getting longer, people are playing more games. So I feel like there's like they've kind of like they've given some they've moved some, but the reality is like people aren't cashing in on them the way that they should be. I mean, you're talking about like real wealth that should be going. I'm talking about Black families in particular. We're talking about real wealth that should be going to Black families, and for decades has been denied, and it's super problematic, man. We put people's kids into private school straight up, you know. That's the reality of it, right? That's what we did. We put their kids into private school, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so yeah, they're enjoying the fruits of our labor, which is like just super problematic, man. And I, you know, and I'm like, and I never want to come across as like dogging coaches, because at the end of the day, they're victimized by this very problematic higher ed system where at the end of the day, it's just about wins and losses, right? So I will say, while they also kind of fall victim to this, at least they're getting paid like fair market value. So it's yeah.
No, I definitely agree. I definitely 100% agree. I think you know, when it comes to that, you know, I feel like my dad always used to tell me, like, son, don't let the school pimp you. You pimp the school, so get your degree.
Right.
So that was like the main advice that he gave me that I always took. So I got my degree from Long Beach State. But like there were so many dudes who didn't, you know, they went to school 4 years,
right,
and didn't get their degree. And so like for me, it's like a situation where, you know, like you said, like going to college and playing high level Division I basketball is a job, essentially. Right. You know, like we went to UCLA, we went to school from 7 to like, let's just say 2. You might get a quick lunch, and then practice started at 3. You were going to practice 3 hours, you know, and, you know, whatever, 5 times a week. And then after that, you were going to study hall, you know, for 2-3 hours, you know, and then we might have a team meeting after that to discuss, you know, whatever next team stuff, like, you know, 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock at night. And so you're doing everything. That's a daily thing.
Right. Yeah.
And so like, yeah, it's like just a super grind in college, and like you're not getting singing a single cent, you know, then then it was you just like, you know, you need $20 from your parents to get a pizza on the weekend.
Man, right.
You know what I'm saying? Like, you know, so
yeah, you were there when Ramogi Huma was there, right? He was older than you, or had he already graduated?
At UCLA?
Yeah.
Yeah, he was. Graduated. Yeah, he might have graduated before me.
Okay. I mean, well, yeah, because there's that very famous story, right? When they tried to start up the College Athletes Council, it was a UCLA football player who literally, like low-income football player who didn't have food to eat, and an agent dropped off groceries at his doorstep, and he got in trouble for it, right? And it's just like the most absurd story. When you think back on it, it's just absolutely absurd, man. But
no. Yeah. And that's how it is, like literally. Right. And so like, I mean, you know, NCAA, you know, we talked about it, you know, like they made, it was like $5.6 billion or something like that for the tournament. You know, like it was this year's tournament, especially because it was, you know, like the last 2 tournaments, one got canceled and then one was like in a bubble, essentially. You know, this year was like the first year that they actually made so much money. And it's just like, man, like all that money, you know, from that NCAA makes off of these kids. And I just be like, they should have, you should get a percentage, like, you know, each participant, right? And let's just say they give every kid, like when he graduates, $200,000 or something like that. I don't know. Just so he has a nest egg to kind of figure out what's his next move if he's not going directly to the NBA.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Right. So, and even then, like, you know, we know, like, even then, if you do go to the NBA, like the average career, right? Maybe what is it, 2.5 years, maybe, if that, you know, it's just, yeah. So,
you know, I mean, yeah, you don't, because you just don't know. Like I said, the NBA is, you know, like for me, like unless you're a first round pick, you know, like then you get the 5-year deal. But like even then, you know, Jerome was a lottery pick, but Jerome only played the 4 years and then he was overseas, you know? You know, like, and if you go overseas like myself or like yourself, like it's essentially year-to-year contracts.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Absolutely. So like you have to prove yourself literally every year, you know, because they look like they be churning in and out. So you know, like as far as college goes, that's like the biggest thing, you know, for me. What would you say your biggest lesson that you learned in college?
Biggest lesson, you know, I think feel like what I learned in college was I think I walked out of there remembering if I'm ever in a position of power, like if I ever work on a campus like this, like there's a way that I want to show up as an advocate for students that's different than what I experienced. I feel like because I feel like you learn a lot from good coaches. I feel like you can learn just as much, if not more, from bad coaches, right? And I feel like for me, it was like there's a way I want to show up as a mentor and as a supporter of students if I ever ended up working on a college campus, which I did end up doing. So, so honestly, I mean, I feel like my experience is what propelled me to go back to grad school and start working in higher ed, you know, where I got to work at Stanford for a number of years. And I feel like, you know, my experience, it's something I drew from when I was on campus, because it's because, you know, like for all the ups and downs, there were the wonderful people on the campus who just really spoke like great wisdom into my life and were very impactful in terms of like who I became as a person. So, yeah.
No, that's good, man. Like I said, man, I tell you, like it's the impactful people that you remember the most,
right?
You know, in your life.
Right.
All right, so you do you do your years at Cal.
Yeah.
What happens next? Are you thinking NBA? You thinking overseas? You know, what were you thinking?
I was hopeful for the NBA. You know, I don't know that I was bold enough to actually say that out loud, that I was hoping for the NBA. I was just like, let me just play as hard as I can and see where it goes. But I went to Portsmouth, and so the game. Matt Barnes.
Yeah.
Played. I think our teams played against each other the first game, and it was like two ships. And like one was like two planes. One was like nose diving, and one was like Matt, like, bro, the way he dominated this game, and it was like, and you made the point early on. It's like when he came in as a recruit, he was like kind of like the last guy, but the way he dominated this game, it was like, man, his career is taking off. I had a really, really awful 3 games at Portsmouth, and definitely didn't get drafted. But I played in the summer, like the longest summer pro league. And basically after Portsmouth, I really had a bad showing at Portsmouth, and then I just got back in the gym and just was really, really grinding. And I had some pretty good games at the Long Beach Summer Pro League, and then some overseas offers were coming my way. But Billy, I was at a workout where Billy was, and I wasn't really clear what it was. And then I found out later that it was for the Globetrotters. And what they were doing was they were putting together a team of like essentially 14 guys that would play exhibition games against colleges in the preseason. And there were some really good hoopers there. And so they put this contract in front of me for a year, 6 figures. My dad saw it and he was like, I don't make that kind of money. Like, you gotta take that. And so so I signed the contract, and it was one of those things where it was like, literally, this is just for the money, right? Like, granted, I appreciated the friendships that I was developing, but as far as an organization, I just feel like, you know, I mean, I don't even get me started on the Globetrotters. But anyways, so 13 games. I played 13 games. We have the 14th game coming up, and at that point, they had cut like 80% of the roster. I was one of the last people left that they had not replaced on this like road trip. And I was just so exhausted. I was like, man, I can't do this. I'm playing myself. These people are awful. Like, let me get out of here. And so I just bounced and like literally got my bag in the middle of the night and just like got out of there, caught the first flight I could from Columbus, Ohio, back to LA. And my family's like, oh my gosh, you can't quit. You can't quit. I was like, listen, like, sure, I get it. There's probably a more professional way, but I was like, like the stuff that was going on that trip was just so bad. It was so bad. It was like so dehumanizing. I was like, I got to do something different. And so, and then I was home again for basically the month of December. And I'm trying to remember where everybody would play pickup in LA. The sports club. What's the sports club? I'm aging us now, Travis. This is a long time ago. But there's a sports club that a lot of hoopers would go and play at. It's like South LA.
Well,
okay. Anyways,
all I know is the
right.
men's gym. All I know is the men's gym.
Yeah, well, it wasn't. Yeah, so it wasn't summer because the men's gym is usually summer, right?
Yeah.
So this is like December, right? So
okay.
So I'm playing in these pickup games at this like sports club, and there's a brother from Guatemala who apparently he said to me when we were playing pickup, I hit him with an up and under. He's like, I've never been hit with an up and under like that. He's like, I'm going to Mexico. You want to come with me? I'm going down. They'll pay you like $4K a month. And I'm like sitting at home right now, and you know, there's like overseas jobs had already come and gone, and so I'm like, cool, let's do it. So we go down to Campeche, Ciudad del Carmen, which is like southern Mexico, and it was like basically like a winter league. And I go and I play a couple weeks down there, and while I'm there, I'm trying to think. No, so it was like December and January, February. So it was around like February that I went, and I found out that I was going to get invited to the Suns summer league camp that summer. So I was like, I'm going home and I want to go home and train. So I basically was in Mexico for like a few weeks, went home to train, went to the summer league tryout, made it to the end of the week, and they were like, you need a couple more years overseas. And I was like, all right. And came back home, and I was like, I need to start thinking about grad school. And I think there was some other tryouts mixed throughout that time. But yeah, I mean, I think at that point, what had caught up to me was I liked basketball. I didn't love it, and I wasn't really passionate about it. And so what was fueling me was just trying to put some money in the bank. And that's for me, that's just not a strong enough motivator. Like I really need to be intellectually engaged and curious about what I'm doing. And so yeah, I mean, my like literally, I take my hat off to everybody that was able to do that overseas grind for like more than a couple of years, bro. Because I'm like,
no, it's a grind.
Man, when I went to Croatia and I was trying out for a team, and it was like you're in the hotel room and then you're the double days and the 2-day practices, and in the hotel room, like the TV, it's like all you know, like none of it is in English. Yeah. And you know, I wasn't mature enough at the time to like, you know, that's plenty of time to like read or write or maybe even play video games. I never was into video games, so that just wasn't practical for me. But like, okay, I was so lonely. I was like, I can't do this. This is crazy. I hate this. So yeah, I ended up coming home. It was, I think it was mutual. I feel like I sabotaged myself because I was like, just get me the hell out of here. There actually what ended up happening was the agent I was working with was like, okay, it didn't work out in Croatia, but we got some other jobs in Macedonia. So I want you to take a bus ride down to Macedonia and or a bus ride to Turkey. And I need to look up what the distance is because I think it is insane. I think it is like a life, like it's like the greatest road trip I would have ever taken in my life. And so I was like, I'm going home. I'm done. I'm going home. And so I went home, and then yeah, man, just started applying to grad school, started working in education, and then like the rest is history. So I mean, I played in the USBL for a few months, and the last thing I did was San Jose had an ABA team, and I was able to. I was in grad school at Berkeley, and I was able to play the home games with the ABA team and still like be a full-time student, which was pretty nice. It was a cool way to end my career. So
no, that's cool, man. That's cool. You know, like I would say for me, you know, you were 100% right as far as that overseas grind. When I did it for 10 years, you know, it was, you know, some years when I played in Estonia, especially, we played about 78, 79 games. So we was like 3-4 different leagues.
That's crazy.
Yeah, no, I remember like, you know, during the peak of that time, we were playing in something called the ULIP Cup, you know, where you play like different, you know, like high level teams in different countries. So we would play in those on a Tuesday. So we had to fly out Monday, play on Tuesday, fly back either Tuesday night or Wednesday morning, practice Wednesday, play in the Baltic League, which was Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania on Thursday. Yeah. Then play another game on Saturday in the same league. That's, you know, cool. Yeah. And then we had to play in the Estonian League on that following Sunday. Yeah, so we was on the grind of like just I was like, oh my God, dude.
That's wild. That's
Yeah.
wild, man.
Yeah.
That's
So like,
wild.
you know, and like
Yeah.
you imagine being there from August to June, you know?
Like the coldest place on earth, basically.
Yeah, Baltic, but yeah. Stony
Yeah.
was pretty cold because of the Baltic tip.
Yeah.
So yeah, it
Yeah.
was about -15. I would come with my face mask on. All you saw was my eyes and my
Yeah.
mouth.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
they're like, dude, it's not that cold. I'm like, dude, I'm from California. -15. This is awful.
That's
You
crazy.
know? Yeah,
That's
man.
crazy.
So yeah, I
Yeah.
understand that. I understand that.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
So you obviously you tried the overseas thing. You
Right.
tried to, hard to go try this thing.
Mhm.
On like based on your experience, what would be like your advice for the next Soloman
Man,
Hughes coming up? You know?
for sure. I would say just really take the time to figure out what's really in your heart, man. Because if you're just doing something because other people think it's a really good idea for you, eventually that's going to betray you. And I think, it's funny because actually getting this acting gig and stepping back into the world of basketball, I feel like I'm stepping into the game with new eyes and a new appreciation. And I'm like, man, I wish I could have liked, like, I like now, I feel like now I like have developed a love for the game, just when I think about the history of it and et cetera. And so I feel like, I feel like just a little more ownership, like really just being honest with yourself. I would tell Solomon to be more honest with yourself about like how you really feel about the game. And what else? And then, like it's so cool to hear you talk about your overseas grind. My brother did it for 8 years, and I'm like, there's always a way to make something better, like there is, like I'm sure you saw so much of the world, right? So like there's always ways to like figure out how to make a situation work in your favor. So so I think those are some of the things I would tell myself. I think it's such a unique experience, man. It's such a unique experience. I'm like, I would talk to Billy when he would come back. We had like this annual phone call in the summers where he would come home, and I'm just like, yo, like, and because Billy did it for like a long
15.
time as
He
well.
did it for like 14, 15 years.
Right. And I mean, in my mind, I'm like, when are you going to stop? And he's like, what are you even asking me? Like, what are you talking about? Like, and I know he used to get annoyed with me. Billy used to get really annoyed with me. Like, why are you asking me that question? Like I love, obviously Billy loved basketball. Man, like, and so, yeah, man, it's a trip. So I guess all that to say, I would tell myself to like really kind of take stock of like how I'm feeling about something, and not to be like easily persuaded or just pushed in directions based on what somebody else thinks I should be doing. And really kind of, trying to take ownership. So, yeah.
That makes sense. Like I said, I remember like I took my son up to UCLA last summer, and I was just like, man, I know it's a hell of a walk because UCLA, I felt like it was my first 2 years of college, first 2 years away from home. So I felt like I was running around with a chicken with his head cut off. But
right.
you know what I'm saying? But like I enjoyed it. I was like, man, like my son was like, man, you went to here, Dad? I'm like, yeah, man. Yeah, son, just come up here. This is why I used to go to school, play basketball, that stuff. Yeah. It's a greater appreciation now than it was than it was then. So yeah, I understand that completely. I understand that completely.
Yeah.
Well, obviously, we gotta get it, we gotta get into it. Everybody, like I said before, Soloman is playing the greatest player to ever play the game. And you can quote me on that. That's how I feel Kareem is. How did you get into, winning time? How did you get into the show?
So funny story. When I graduated from Cal and I came down to LA to play in the Summer Pro League and just try to figure out what was going to be next. I was living at my grandma's in Carson, and there was somebody at some of these workouts who would talk about commercials and acting, and they're like, it's a great thing. It's a great opportunity in the summer to get into, to look into acting, to get like roles in commercials, etc. Todd had done a really big commercial, And I remember seeing him on TV, and I remember, people were talking about this. And so somebody gave me contact information for this guy. I can't remember his name, and I'm glad I don't remember his name because he was super rude. But Rico Hines, were in his office together. I'll never forget this. We're in his office together. And we were, because we were trying to get like auditions and trying to like get into the world, right? And Travis, like, it was like this dude, like, relished in the opportunity to just talk shit to us. It was so bizarre. Like, he was just like, why do you think I can help you? Like, who are you? Like, and just was like criticizing our lives, our life choices. It was so bizarre. It was like basically the power construct of the casting couch, where you're kind of vulnerable and you have someone who's connected to the industry and they're basically telling you why you need them. It was wild, man. And Rico was right there next to me. Like, at some point I want to get in contact with him and see if he remembers this, but dude was like a total prick. I did get a audition for an Advil commercial, and I went on it. I got a call back, but I didn't get the commercial. But I was fascinated with the space, and I was I'm someone that loves film, TV, and theater, just loves it, and I know the impact that it's had on me personally. So, so even though I'd been working in higher ed, I'd worked even though I was in grad school doing my PhD, doing all that. Mm-hmm. I would look online for like casting calls to see if there were opportunities, to see, if they were casting something that was sport related, whatever, just to figure out how to like get my foot in the door. And that's like 15 to 20 years of doing that, just looking, right? Looking for opportunities. And nothing's coming my way. And then summer of 2019, Francisco Elson, who's in the Netherlands, a casting agent had reached out to him because they'd been doing this such a global search for someone to play the role of Kareem. And Francisco wasn't interested. Also, it's fascinating because Francisco, if you remember Francisco, he's much darker skinned.
Yeah. I was kind of like, right. Francisco?
Exactly. Right. So Cisco's like, I'm not interested and I'm not coming back to California, but you should look at Soloman Hughes.
Right.
And so the next day, a casting agent sent me part of the script, a couple scenes from the script, and some instructions. Basically, you had to do like the self-tape where you like record yourself doing lines. And so Robbie Jones, who played at Cal with me and who's been acting for like 20 years.
I know Robbie. I know Robbie, big time.
Yeah. Robbie's been killing it, man. He's a lead in the Tyler Perry film Temptation.
Yep.
And then the Jim Gaffigan film recently, and then 90210, One Tree Hill, all that, right? So he said, Robbie's like, Solomon, don't send the casting agent tape. Send it to me first. I just want to look at it. So I do it, and I send it to him. And he calls me back right away. He was like, I didn't know you could act. And I was like, I don't even really know what that means. He was like, oh my gosh. He was like, I think you can get this. I think you can get this part. And so, long story short, he works with me for an entire day. He basically gives me a crash course in a lot of like the acting courses he's taken. And we redo the self-tape. We redo the audition tape. And it's like one scene was the airplane scene where I'm with the kid. And another scene was I was like talking to Magic about the Skylink. So we redo those scenes, and Robbie's reading on, we were on Zoom, I guess. And he's like reading the other part of the script. And so we send it in, and then like 4 days later, they're like, all right, they're flying you down to LA to do an in-person audition. And at this point, I'm like, I wasn't really expecting anything, to be straight up. I was just like, I was excited to get an opportunity to audition for something. No matter what they were going to say, I was just like glad that someone was at the very least just giving me a shot. And so I'm like, like LA, like what? Like, yes, let's do it. All right. So I get to LA, and Robbie comes to the hotel the night before my audition, and we go through the scenes over and over and over again. We work them again. And he's like telling me, he's like, all right, this is what you're going to experience. You're going to walk in there. They're going to be lined up in a row, and don't worry about the energy they're giving you. You just focus on what you're doing. He's like, literally try to approach it like you approach a game. When you walk out of that tunnel, you got your job, and you're not getting distracted by what's going on around you. So I'm in there for like an hour and a half, and they're putting me through the ringer. Like, and it's like, like award-winning casting directors and agents and executive producers, Adam McKay, Max Bornstein, et cetera, like Francine Meisler, like head honchos of like HBO stuff, right? And they're, they have me doing the scenes, and they're like, all right, do it this way. Now say it like this. Change the energy. Now be a little more angry with it, right? I'm doing over and over and over. And then we get to the end, and they're like, Adam McKay is like, now let's do some improv. And I'm like, okay. In my mind, I was like, this is where I lose right now. This is where I lose the job right here. Right, this is what happens. But we just jumped into an improv scene. I was Quincy Isaiah, who's playing Magic. He was in the audition with. He was basically reading. He had already got his part, and so we were reading together, and then we just jumped into improv, and he's hilarious. So it was a lot of fun, and they liked the scene. They got a kick out of it. And then a week later, they told me I got the part, and I was just like, wow, like life has taken a big pivot. So
yeah, no, that's crazy, man. Like I said, people, y'all don't understand, man. Like when I saw the commercial, right? Because I read the book Showtime.
Wow.
And I read the book Three Ring Circus, both by Bill Pullman, right?
Yeah.
And he put a preview on his Instagram page. Yeah. And so I looked at it. I was like, oh, they doing a Showtime show on HBO. And I was like, oh, that's cool. And then I saw somebody doing a skyhook. I was like, that don't look like Kareem's. That looked like a Soloman Hughes skyhook. Then I saw like your face, and I was like, let me just cut off the beard and the goggles, and that's Solomon. And that's exactly how I was just like looking like Solomon's Kareem. Oh man, that is cool.
That's cool.
Yeah, man. I was so surprised, man. I was happy. Yeah. I was happy. I was really happy for you. I was so happy. Like I was happy for you. Like I was in the part. You know what I'm saying? Like I'm playing Kareem. I'm like, my boy Solomon playing Kareem.
Yeah. Man.
You know what I'm saying? So like I didn't caught up. I didn't watch all of them. Yeah, I'm up all first 8. I watched. I think 7 was the one based off like Kareem and like young Kareem to the U.
Episode 5.
Was it 5? 5. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And it was like really just like I was like, man, Solomon, he gonna be that's what he gonna be an actor now. He ain't gonna be no teacher, no boy, gonna be straight acting now, bro. He gonna be seeing him up there like Will Smith. Keep my name out my wife's name out your mouth.
No, Lord willing, man. Lord willing. It's been fun, man. It's been a lot of fun. And I Travis, I honestly think like I feel like there's a lot of lessons that we learned growing up hooping, and being student athletes and having to balance all these different things, right? And just the scrutiny, right? I mean, like it's like I honestly I always think about specifically like you guys, the guys in UCLA, what you guys are experiencing, because you were in such a bubble, right? There was so many eyes on what you were doing, right? And so, we had our own little bubble and our own right at Berkeley, but all in all that to say, like, there's these things that you experience, right? There's the people that are scrutinizing everything you're doing. There's the being able to focus on the job despite what's going on around you. Mm-hmm. There's the reality, especially when you talk about overseas, like you said, there's trapdoors everywhere. Like there's no such thing as a secure job. So you really got to show up and do your best every single time and just have faith that it's gonna work out, right? So I feel like there's a lot of similar elements in this industry. There's a lot of no's. And it's one of those things where I'm like, I think if I do anything well, I don't get shattered by no's. Like when I hear a no, I'm like, all right, okay, let's recalibrate and think about what's another way, right? And so yeah, man, it's an interesting space for sure. But I'm grateful for. I feel like a lot of the lessons I picked up along the way of like on the hoop journey around just putting in an honest day's work and just hoping for the best. So, yeah.
All right. Well, like I said, we went through how you started, how your career ended. How everything in between, how we grew, we was in that era that probably, we talked about it, but I feel like 97 was the greatest, like, California class in history. This is my opinion, you know what I'm saying?
No, that was a wild, wild time, man. Right, because I'm thinking Jason and Jaron, Barron, Shay, you,
Chris Burgess, Eric Chinowitz,
Burgess,
Kenny Bruner.
Kenny Bruner. Man,
Yeah, yeah. And like I said, like Jeff Chapange, Greg Lakey, you know, I mean, it can go on and on, like yourself, Mike McDonald, Billy, Kevin Augustine. You know what I'm saying? Like 97 was beyond the like, you know, like for me, this is just me, like beyond the best class, you know, like high school in California state history, because it was so many of us. Like it was so many dudes who we, you know, like littered all the college basketball here. You know what I'm saying?
So Chris Burgess, man, that's right. Duke.
You know what I'm saying? He was part of that number. Like, they were like tied with us, like 1A, 1B, whatever. Some vindications had their number one. Some of us had us. But it was Burgess, Elton Brand, Shane Battier. You know, it was all in the same class, 97. So we had like 5 or 6 McDonald's All-Americans that year too. So you know. All right, Solomon, man. We're pretty much, we always ask this last question for every one of my guests. At some point, you know, in your career or your life, you know, we go through low points and low points of our, you know, our lives or careers. What got you out of your low point? And was it a person, or was it, you know, you just talking to God, or how did you get out of it?
Just straight up talking to God, 100%, man. Prayer, like, and I feel like I think I grew up in, believing that your prayers had to be really buttoned up, right? And I think it was like maybe it was like right after college, I kind of had this breakthrough, and I realized, you know, I'm trying to have all this flowery language, but the reality is God knows what's in my heart, so I just got to keep it real anyway, right? So just being able to be straight up and be honest, man, I feel like that has always, man, I mean, I feel like when I look back on my life and I look back at like some of the struggles with confidence, some of the struggles with depression, anxiety, etc. There's just a lot of beating up on yourself there's a lot of beating up on myself that I was doing, and also on other people, because I feel like it inevitably spilled out into how I was like treating other people. And so for me, man, honestly, like when I just like, I feel like one of my favorite Kendrick Lamar songs, How Much a Dollar Costs, he talks about Exodus 14, and Exodus 14:14 is be still and know that God will fight for you. And that's like, I always come back to that, and that brings me like such great peace, because man, you know, life is a trip. We're sitting here now, 40 plus year old man, like,
Right,
it was like just yesterday, it was 97, you know?
You know what I'm saying? That's pretty much just yesterday we was playing against each other when you was at Rockfish or something like that, back in 95, 96, you know what I'm saying? Exactly. So trust me, man, I understand, you know what I'm saying? And I'm so grateful to find you. I found you again. I'm so appreciative I found you. And, you know, man, I'm so thankful for you coming on the show, man. I really appreciate it, brother, man. And like I said, anytime you want to come back on, anything, you know, you definitely, like I said, I appreciate it.
100%. No, thank you for having me on, Travis. This is good for the soul, catching up, man.
Oh man, definitely, man. Like I said, you know, like I do this show for people like yourself, you know, to catch up of a life and just everything, how everything went, man. All right.
That's cool.
Well, like I said, thank you, Solomon. Like I said, and people, if you listen this far, I appreciate you. Please like, share, subscribe. You know, please like, share, subscribe, because like I said, this one's coming up pretty fast. You know, be up on YouTube, you know, now, and Spotify and Apple Podcasts on the Believe Network. So thank you, and I will talk to you later.